Hello and welcome to Fearless DIY Music. My name is Tristan Lass, and today I want to talk about file management for creators. If you're a videographer, if you're doing music, if you're doing any sort of production work using a computer, file management is vital to your workflow and keeping your sanity. I apologize up front. I have to wear my glasses today because I'm going to be looking at my laptop screen here that's right in front of me. I'm not going to be looking at the camera the whole time. We're going to be kind of clicking through a few things as I talk through my method for file management, some of the tips that I've kind of come up with for myself to keep my workflow even. So I apologize if the glasses are a little glary. It's just the way it has to be. So apologies up front, and let's carry on. All right. So, about 2.5, 3 years ago, I made the decision that I wanted to start doing the YouTube thing. At that point in time, 3 years ago, I had all analog gear. I had no computers in my studio whatsoever. And I got to kind of start from scratch when I started building both the videography suite in here and the videography suite out in my shop. And then also my music production suite here in the studio. And I also have a music production suite out in the shop. So I got to kind of start at ground zero. And I spent a lot of time up front after gathering my gear and accumulating all of the tools that I needed to make the shift from analog to digital. I spent a lot of time thinking about how I was going to have my file management system set up. In the past, I've always, had on my computers just like these unknown things just hanging out somewhere, or I would save things multiple times in multiple places. And I was very sloppy, from 1995 until 3 years ago with how I took care of my files. So after going through all of my old computers, I bought all new computers for, all the spaces. I went through all my old computers and I went through and cleaned up all of my files. And I kid you not, due to the fact it was 20 years worth of stuff, it took me months to go through everything, get everything properly organized, properly labeled, archived properly. It took forever. But in that process, I came up with how I organize my files now on all of my new systems. And last summer, when my dear friend Kevin Gamble, who's a regular on the channel, he was out here and we made a video together. And he watched how the workflow went. And he was like, wow, that is so fast. You have this so dialed. And so I thought I would just share a handful of tips that I came up with for myself, in the hopes that it will help others who are, either aspiring content creators, or if you've been doing this stuff forever and you have difficulty like finding things, or if you are dissatisfied with your workflow, I'm hoping that some of these tips will be helpful. All right. So the very first thing up front is that when I am initiating a new piece of software, if I'm opening up a music session, if I'm opening up OBS, which I'm using right now to capture this, I have as my default setting a file folder where that information is going to end up. Okay. By that, I mean, when I'm recording on OBS, I have a file folder right here on my desktop that says OBS captures. That file folder is where all of my OBS captures go. As soon as I am done with the capture, and this is point number 2, not only do I know that it's going to that file folder, I also instantly name it. And I think that naming files is something that's a little bit of an art. I've got obviously hundreds of videos up. A lot of them are in similar topics. You need to have a unique identifier for everything that you create. Every, file that you're going to, generate needs to have a unique indicator that makes it easy for you to find and makes it easy for you to identify. And the way that I've come up to do that is that I'm not scared of keystrokes. Type in enough information so that you know exactly what is in that file. Don't just go guitar, take 3, or, whatever. Identify everything about it. What guitar were you using? What song is it? Just exhaustive detail in naming a file, even though it seems wonky and it seems like it's time consuming at that moment, will save you hours of scouring through things to find something that has a vague label or a label that just doesn't have enough information in it to make it, worthwhile or usable. All right. I've already talked about this a little bit up front where I'm like, okay, well, I'm doing my OBS captures. So those go to a file on my desktop, a folder on my desktop that says OBS captures. On my desktop currently, and I apologize for not looking at the camera, but I'll go through, here are all of my folders that all my files go to. Now I have OBS captures, I have my Ardour sessions, which is my DAW. So sessions means that those are, basically, I've started recording a song. So that goes into sessions. Then I have master files for individual albums. And that's where the stereo mix downs, Redbook renderings end up from the Ardour sessions. Then I have an all-purpose folder that's just like my name with just kind of like stuff in it, like, screen grabs and things like that. Nothing of consequence to my actual workflow here on YouTube or for music production. Then I have my Ardour export files. Now, what would go in there? What I have there is I have things that I do out in the shop end up here. And that way, if I do a drum track out in the shop, I bring it in here, I dump it into that file folder, then I import it into the Ardour sessions, and I keep my workflow together, but I also keep it segregated so that I know what's coming from another source besides this room right here. Okay, next up I have Hydrogen Tracks. That's my drum sequencing program. So all my drum sequencing has its origin point there. Then I have Hydrogen Stereo Mixes. That's where I take those raw tracks from the Hydrogen tracks and mix those down within Hydrogen's proprietary mixing, and they go into there, and those are ready to export directly into the Ardour sessions as stereo mix tracks. I have a file folder called MP3 Working Demos. In that folder, I would quite simply put in Ardour sessions that are just rough mixes, and then I take those anywhere I need to go to record other parts or just to listen to it, and it's just, working demos. And then, I have a couple other miscellaneous folders for various, versions of mixes, but I keep everything separate. And I go into maybe more in minutia than I need to. But that way I don't get confused and I don't accidentally upload an MP3 or a WAV file or whatever to be released that is not actually the final mix. That can happen, especially if your labeling is sloppy on those file folder, on the files to begin with. So just keeping everything tight, keeping it detailed, having a place where everything goes, and making sure that when you are exporting things or rendering things or whatever, that they are ending up in a dedicated folder, with all of the files of the exact same type in that folder and nothing else. Clearly labeled, and I swear that kind of workflow will save you so much time. And then, yes, another, let's see. Oh, another thing, don't keep multiple copies of things in the same file folder. If you have a revised version, get rid of and you have no need to go back to the old versions. And especially if you're doing, non-destructive editing, which most video editors and most DAWs are these days, you don't need to keep old stuff that you're never going to use. Get rid of it, or what I like to do is just overwrite it. I use the exact same name, I overwrite the file, I just say yes, overwrite, and then that way you don't have multiple copies of the same thing in bad versions floating around with your good versions. Very important. And then I guess the final thing is, when you're going through all of this workflow stuff with your files and your folders, also make sure that your programs are talking to each other nicely. Like I have, when I open up my video editing program, All my OBS captures are just right there. That's the first thing. Then I hit plus to add in clips. It goes right there. I have everything set to default settings to go right to the folders and the files that I need for that particular stage of the production process. The same thing goes when I do a rendering from my video editing program of the final cut of the video that's going to be uploaded. That goes to its own dedicated file folder that is then, carefully labeled, and it goes just right there automatically. I have everything linked together between every step of the process, both for audio work and for video work. So those are just some tips. I mean, taking your time, and also, taking your time, kind of clearing house, and sometimes starting over is a good option, but taking your time to really label everything and have a place where everything goes that is the same every time, make everything repeatable. That I cannot stress that enough. Make everything repeatable, have it all automated to go to the same place that it needs to go every time that you do something, every time you record a song, every time you make a video, that your workflow is the same and that everything's ending up where it needs to be. And sometimes if things are really screwed up in your workflow or with your file management currently, let's say everything's a mess, hit a hard reset button. Stop, back things up to an external hard drive, maybe clear off your desktop, and just start over. And slowly work your way through and get everything organized and delete everything that you do not need any longer. I highly recommend it. All right, well, those are just some tips. I know that not many people are going to watch this video, but if you've watched it to this point, hit subscribe, talk to your friends, get some, share the video, see if you have any tips to share as well in the comments section. Like, share, subscribe, hit me up in the comments, and we'll see you next time with another video. You take care.